All right, how's everybody doing tonight? If someone could just give me a quick shout out in the chat, that'd be great to let me know that you can hear me. John seems to be running a little bit late tonight for his own, well, it's not his debut of his Heroic Tales #2 that debuted on his channel last Friday, I think it was. Let me see here. One second. Ken here. Thank you very much, Jewel. We got 13 people in the chat already. Pedro is here. Vaz is here. Rex is here. Manny is here for a moment. And Jewel, of course. How's everybody doing? I just figured that even with John being late, I should start on time. Let's just take a look at his campaign without him even being here. Let's do that. And we'll take a look at whether or not we should fund this thing before John even gets here. Let's see. He's already made back, it was $1,342. That's 134% of his goal. So good thing for John that he made back his goal. Let's just take a look here. $6 for the digital. He's got the $10, well, as his usual price, $10 Heroic Tales for #1 and #2. And then US, wait a minute. $10 USD Heroic Tales 1, 2. Oh, digital. Oh, okay. That's what that is. So, and then you get the $10 plus shipping for Heroic Tales #2. We got cover A, cover B, and we have $10 for the cosplay cover, $20 if you want the cover bundle, and let's see, $20 for Heroic Tales #1 and 2. Let's take a quick look and see if John's waiting. Oh, look. Let's see. John is not waiting yet. Okay, we'll go back to his campaign. $20, so $10 for add-ons. And there's some of the covers in the background. So John's doing a flip book. There's 2 tales in each book, and you just flip it over and read the other side. And so you get 2 covers. That's why you got 2 covers for each book. Let's see. Scrolling down. He's also got the add-on of the Heroic Tales pint glass. I think he did shot glasses last time. And of course, Mary Sue coin. He did a coin last time as well. All right, so that is the basic gist of his campaign. We're going to scroll up to, I think this is the main cover done by Renzo. We'll scroll up to the trailer and we'll play that in just a moment. Let's see who else has showed up in the chat. Let's see. Ryan is here, and let's see. Rex says, take a break, though some writers block myself. Okay, sounds good. You got writer's block, yeah, take a break. Let's see. Full screen layout. Let's see if we can make this as big as possible, and we'll play John's trailer before he even gets here. Let's see. I can't make the entire page. Wait a second here. Hold on a second. My apologies for the ringy-dingy thing. I got to get that out here. Let's see. If apologize for 1 second, I'll put John's thing on. Apparently, John says I did not send in the link. I thought I sent you the link, John. Let me see here. I will invite guests. Give me a second here. Apparently, I need to. If anybody wants to come along, there's the StreamYard link right there. Give it to you, John. Just 1 second. Here we go. Very quickly, I apologize to everyone for the slight delay in John's showing up. And let's see. We will close this I'm showing too much stuff here to begin with. All things are popping up from my computer. And let's see if we can stop the sharing. Here we go. There we go. And there's John. All right, John, we've already evaluated your entire campaign.
Oh, we're talking
waiting
about
for you.
Back. Okay.
Yeah, and we watched the trailer and everything. It's like, I think our job is done for the night. I'm just gonna pack it up here.
Good night, everybody. Yeah, I was clicking on the link that you sent me, but it was to the last time I was on your channel. I'm like,
oh,
this is already
okay.
done.
All right. My apologies.
It's okay. I know that the tree house that you live in is kind of difficult with technology. That's fine. That's everything.
Not too bad. We were just looking at your campaign. You already made back 134% of what you were looking for.
Yeah, I can't even talk. I was just talking with Dan Fraga. Man, that was fun. He's a fun guy to talk to. But the way I work is, I paid for the first issue out of pocket, and then the first issue paid for the second issue. So I put the funding low because my comic's already funded. It's going to happen. By hook or crook, it's already paid for and everything. So what we're really doing is trying to raise funds for the third issue. So, you know how expensive it is to make a comic. So, this comic is paid for. It's going to happen. I'm ahead of schedule. I should be delivering early this time around. And, but let's make it happen for issue 3. So my goal is to get to like 6,000 because that's a reasonable number for me to make a comic. So
sounds good.
Yep. So this comic is it's issue 2 of Heroic Tales. Heroic Tales, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like a love letter to Bronze Age Marvel. So it's blue sky superheroes. They're good guys. They're, as of right now, the patriarch. I wanted him to be a positive masculine figure. So he's a good father. He's a good husband. He's a good superhero. He's not one of these Omni-Man guys that secretly has plans. For him, the best day in the world would be to stay home with the wife and kids. He's got a farm. He homeschools, but duty calls, and supervillains, that's what they do. They ruin his day, and he has to go out and take care of business. So, and then I'm also introducing Mary Sue. Mary Sue is me kind of goofing on like the girl boss. Like whenever you make a female character these days, everybody just says, "Oh, she's a Mary Sue." So I figured I'd meet you, cut you off at the pass. So I just named her Mary Sue. Sue is a Chinese last name. She's a third generation Chinese immigrant. And what do you do when you're already perfect? She's a 4.0 student. She's a good girl. She doesn't drink. She doesn't smoke. She helps run her parents' business. Well, now she has powers that are omnipotent level powers. She's that level power. But the thing is, it has consequences to her power that I hope you guys pick up what she does in her first appearance. And then her second appearance, which will be Heroic Tales 3, is the consequences of what she did in issue number 2. So, think of the butterfly effect. If she could rearrange possibilities, the way I describe this is, you might want to disagree what you mean by blue sky super. Yeah, a couple of people. Blue sky is like the term that Chuck Dixon said, like feel good comics back when Superman was a good guy, when Batman was a good guy. Blue sky.
Very much. Yeah, it's Superman comics. It's feel good Superman.
Right. That's what I mean. So good point there, Rex Blazer. Thank you. So Mary Sue could change possibilities. So like think of like a car veers off the street and runs over a little old lady. Well, if she changes the possibilities, she makes it so that doesn't happen. Now, does that car go and hit somebody else? You know what I mean? Oh, does she really get to pick who lives and dies? She doesn't want that responsibility. Things like that. Why does Mary Sue have a scar if she's perfect? Because everything has a consequence, and plus it looks cool, and because I'm thinking about the Spirit, how the Spirit got beat up in every issue. So I was just like, what if I make this tiny, petite, super cute little Chinese girl, and then she just gets the holy hell stomped out of her every issue? Like, how bad would people? I already had somebody call me a misogynist because the patriarch's wife is scarred. Now Mary Sue is scarred. But don't worry, I got a female character number 4 who's not scarred, so don't worry. Did Mary Sue family get here before 1965? Yes, she did. Her grandparents fled Mao Zedong in the, what's that called, the Cultural Revolution in the 50s. They came here penniless. They started up it's spelled S-U, Sue. They started up like a little grocery store in Flushing. I know exactly the corner. I love this downtown Chinatown in Flushing. And then their son, Mary Sue's father, turned it into Sue Mart. So it's like a Eastern chain of grocery stores. I know, like, again, I know exactly the location. So she's born into wealth. She has like multiple PhDs. This is Martina Markota. She has the comic Lady Alchemy. I was like, can you help me sell T-shirts?
Oh yeah.
I was like, a beautiful woman wearing my T-shirt. So I sent her the T-shirt. She sent me these pictures, and I put them online. And people are like, you got to make a cosplay cover. So I'm making a cosplay cover. This isn't the cover. This is the placeholder, because I literally got these pictures like 2 days before we went live. So we'll make it a cosplay cover. I also sent somebody else a Patriarch shirt, because he looks exactly like, but he didn't understand what I was asking him to do. Like, I wanted him to pose like heroically and make so unfortunately I don't have a Patriarch. This is how it starts. It's going to have a little bit more strategically placed word balloons, so I'll tone it down a bit. And this is the Patriarch. A little boy fell into a sinkhole. There's Regina, the stalker reporter there. She's got a story to tell, and her story, oh God, I can't wait to tell her story. There's Lucius Kane, the suit. He's the mayor of Science City. The Patriarch knows that he's a bad guy. He knows that he's a bad guy, and he knows that the Patriarch knows that he's a bad guy, but you can't just go and beat up the mayor. You know what I mean? It's like a Superman Lex Luthor dynamic. This is art from the Mary Sue story. Science gone awry. Her boss, Philip Manning, he doesn't want to be just a businessman. He wants to be super powerful. And he knows that superheroes get powers from some places, that they read their origins in the newspaper. So he's trying to figure out what's the common denominator between superhero origins. And unbeknownst to Mary Sue, she's working for a supervillain, and that's her stories. And of course, Mary Sue's perfect. She follows OSHA regulations. Her boss doesn't follow OSHA regulations. And one of the side effects of not following OSHA regulations is demonic beings from beyond the universe show up and cause havoc. But, that luckily Mary Sue was there. These are my stretch goal cards. I got a bunch of cards that Renzo and Oscar and Daniel are coloring. So I went nuts because I introduced like 20 super characters in issue 2 between villains and cameo appearances. So I got a bunch of cards. So I'm real hopeful that we're going to do good. And you can see I got original Renzo art pieces. These are actual art from Renzo. I bought a couple of pages from him, and he sent me a big bundle. I said, let's put it on the campaign and sell your pieces. So these are hand drawn, unique art from Renzo on my campaign.
I love seeing this is what Renzo sends me every time I get a page as well. It's just beautiful pencils before we even get to the inking part of it.
Yeah,
I love his pencils.
Yeah, and he's getting. I discovered Renzo because he did your Thomas Valiant, but Renzo leveled up. You got to see the artwork that he did for Mary Sue. He's halfway done with the Patriarch. So he said he'll be done in 2 more weeks. Then we just get it colored, lettered, and I'm hoping that I can, start. I'm going to wait to see how many I have to print, but I'm hoping I could ship early because Renzo is just, working like a speed demon. He switched to I don't know if you talked to Renzo lately. For those of you who don't know, Renzo draws RJ's comic. He also draws my comic, but he says he's switching back to traditional because it's faster. So,
oh really?
Yeah. So I said, good. We could sell your art. Get some extra income for you. Yeah. So there you go. That's Philip Manning. That's his lawyer. I got a big story about her that I'd like to tell. Of course, me. The politicians and the lawyers are the supervillains, man. And that lawyer right there, Philip Manning's like, she is horrible. She's the worst villain in the whole series. Nothing worse than a lawyer with who really knows the law. The hero gets out of tough situation. Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Like Mary Sue. Keep in mind, she gets her power. She doesn't know she doesn't know she has powers, and she doesn't know the consequences of her powers. This is her origin, So I hate when superheroes get their powers and instantly understand all the finesse, the finesse and little nuances of their powers. I kind of like when they stumble into it. Now, the Patriarch in issue 1, he's been a superhero for 20 years. So the next comic I make is going to be Patriarch number 1, and it's going to be a couple of days after issue 2, and then it's going to go into a flashback sequence about his origins, and you're going to see him as a skinny guy, unbearded, fumbling around with his powers. But I didn't want to tell his origin on the first issue because I didn't know if I was going to be able to make a second issue, and I figured, nobody cares about the origin of a character if they're not going to see him for a while. So I just wanted to jump in head first. Hey, look at that. That's the Patriarch fighting Dr. Robug. Zach 10. Yeah. Zach 10, because what if he was given 2 powers? The first power is to understand how his second power works. How traditional are we talking about? Stained glass cave drawings? Well, pencils on standard art paper. Yeah. The best of my days will be when the world doesn't need me and I can go back to be absolutely now that I'm going to do the Patriarch in his own series, and Heroic Tales will be what I imagine it to be, like a rotating cast of characters. I think issue 4 of the Patriarch, if I got the numbers correctly, is going to be a day without supervillains, like how spending time with his family and doing things like that. But don't worry, stuff was going to happen. But that'll be the ultimate day for a guy like that, a family man. So he's got 7 kids, and each one of them is going to have, a unique personality. So there you go. Oh, all right, I need to explain this. So this is the variant. This is Jose Garcia. He draws the subterranean fighting of the Patriarch, and then Josh Howard has Mary Sue. But it's a flip book, so you get both covers. So if there's only 2 variation, well, there's 3 now that we have a cosplay cover. But you buy the comic, you get both covers. You get the Patriarch cover and the Mary Sue cover, and it's going to be upside down because you read the Patriarch story, and then in the middle you're going to see the Mary Sue story, and it's going to be upside down. So you flip it over. I want to explain that because some people aren't familiar with the concept of a flip book. They used to do that. Image used to do it all the time, and Tim Seeley does it right now for Local Hero. It's pretty clever because one side is set in the modern world, and then you flip it over, and it's set in like the early Image time with like Rob Liefeld type Image art. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. Yes, Jewel says the book is so cheap it makes me feel upset about the shipping being the same, even though it's cheaper than it's still cheaper than most other crowdfunding. I can't do anything about the shipping, but I think it's the best deal in crowdfunding. I was going to raise the price to $15, but I just felt guilty. I don't want to be one of these SJWs who are like, don't worry, I'm not making a profit, but I think comic books should be affordable. Really, they should be affordable. Like $20 for it's a 40-page comic, so it's not like a DC pamphlet kind of comic. I still feel guilty gouging people for price. That's why I didn't do the 4 individual covers. People are telling me I'm crazy, that I'm leaving money on the table, and I probably am. I just feel bad making people. Well, I'm not making anybody do anything, but people are going to pay $40 to get one of each cover. Instead, you pay $20. So there you go, Jewel. Buy both variations. Buy the Renzo cover and buy the Josh Jose cover, and then that'll be $20 with $10 shipping. And then buy a coin too. There you go. How's that? I'm a terrible salesman, RJ.
I was trying to figure out. So you got tumblers for this one. Was it shot glasses for the last one?
No, the same tumblers. I bought so many. I was, I got it. I was like, everybody's gonna buy. Everybody buys the comic is gonna want a pint glass. Well, that didn't happen. A pint. So it's an 8-ounce beer. beer glass, that a pint glass.
I got you.
I got them professionally made, and the amazing thing is I shipped them. I think the farthest I shipped them was Poland. None of them broke. I'm really
good.
Or at least nobody. One broke, but it was my friend Brian. He said he took it out of the box. He was going to fill it up with beer, and his wife said, "We got to clean that before you could drink beer out of it." and he dropped it right in front of him. So needless to say, Brian and Regina are getting a divorce, and so I said, "Don't worry, Brian. You can buy another one on the next campaign." It didn't break during shipping, so I did my duty. And thank you, Jewel. It just came up now that you bought my comic. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Unlike some people, I love my backers. So does RJ. I'm not implying anything about RJ. I'm implying people that you know who I'm talking about. I will do my best to get this comic on time, if not early. It's a 6. I wish I had one with me right now. I brought it upstairs to clean. I didn't bring it down. But it's whatever you get, a beer glass in a regular bar. It's a professionally made beer glass. Shot glasses. I was thinking about shot glasses, but my garage is filled with beer, with beer tumblers, and coins and all this stuff. T-shirts. I love the T-shirts. I love the coins. I got bags of the coins now. I learned the hard way. I got to order them way in advance because they make them in Norway and ship. Oh man, I don't even know if I'll be able to do it if there's prices are up, but that should be resolved soon.
I have to say, John, here's the thing. Okay. I'll just tell you a little story to interrupt your sales. Here's the difference between being on one side of the border and then the other. Last time me and my brothers were in Boston, we were watching the Super Bowl, and we were just in a pub, and they wouldn't let me buy more than 3 beer at a time to take to the table. I was like, what is the matter with you? Because if I'm north of the border, I could buy like 6 pitchers and just grab them in a big hug and just say, yeah, we're going now. So there's the difference.
My friends and I, when we were 18, we had a Christmas vacation. So we were going to go to New Orleans, but it was just too far of a drive from New York. So I was like, but we want to drink. So we went to Montreal, and oh my God, that was like, it was just like everybody drinking, buying beers, drinking. And have you been to Montreal?
Yep.
Oh my God. It was just like, I almost broke my neck because every girl was beautiful. We're walking down this, and as we were leaving, I was like, we got to get gas. And I remember we pulled into a Shell station, and I just said, watch, a beautiful girl's going to get out and pump our gas. And we all started laughing. And I'll never forget this beautiful curly head, blonde, blue-eyed girl just pumped out. I was like, what is in Montreal? It's in the water. But I also have to say Vancouver was the same thing. I went to Vancouver, and all the women were beautiful. I went to some island where some freak lives, and all the girls are hairy. They look like
we used to have bladder busters in university. I don't know if anybody knows what those are. Basically, the university bar, you get in and you're not allowed to leave once you get in. You can buy a pitcher for $2. So an entire pitcher for $2. And as soon as someone goes to the bathroom,
oh yeah,
it goes back up to the regular price. So
right.
Everybody drinks as much as they can. They order as much as they can. So you get like 6-7 pitchers on your table at one time, because they're only $2 a piece, right?
Right. And we would do that at Stony Brook, and guys would come into the bar in diapers. That was fun. Yeah. That was fun. I'm such a lightweight now, and my wife is Canadian. She used to tease me about you can't drink it. She's like, drinking is no big deal. That's just what you do, And I'm like, I can't drink, So when I built this basement and I invited my friends over, he brought over a big case of bottled beer, and there's still like 3 left in the fridge. That was 4 years ago. That's how little I drink.
My best friend is a farmer, so he's got these big old thick hands. But how he measures making drinks is how many fingers of whiskey do you want in your glass, right? Yeah. And you put in, Coke or 7-Up with it in the last little bit that you want. But yeah, he uses his fingers. Like, how many fingers of rum do you want? How many fingers?
That was the old Benny Hill joke. He would go 4 fingers, and then he would go like this. Alcohol is against the American spirit. I just know American Spirit's the name of those cigarettes that they sell out in the Midwest. We used to joke and call it the healthy cigarette, American Spirits, because they were just like pure tobacco rolled up without any of it.
Hail Constantinius, how you doing? Speaking of which, I literally was I'll just tell you right now, John, since it's Lent anyways. I went to mass this morning and I walked by a guy, his old farmer, and I could just tell from the smell of him. It wasn't a bad smell, but he kind of smelled like my grandparents, that he rolled his own cigarettes. You could just smell it.
It's funny that you said that, because on the construction site you're not allowed to smoke, but they've since learned that if they give a designated smoking area, because guys are going to do it, you know what I mean? Like guys are they're going to go in the bathroom, they're going to find a corner and they're going to smoke. So if they give you, guys want to do the right thing. So there's an area where guys smoke, and since I'm in charge of like material handling and stuff like that, I'm always going by there to by the loading docks. And this one guy takes out a pipe every morning right before coffee break and smokes the pipe. And I freaking love it. It reminds me of my grandfather's. I remember being a little kid, upstate New York. He had the TV that only had like 2 channels because, there was a little rabbit ears, and he would, after dinner, he would just smoke the pipe. And I freaking love it. Like nothing like smells to just trigger memories.
Yeah, same thing with my father. He used to smoke old port, which is cigars, and just they had a sweet smell to them.
Yeah. I remember, because this guy's an old timer too, and he's got the big hoagie nose. You know that this guy's drinking and smoking. And I just looked at him. I was like, "Is that you smoking the pipe?" And he got all defensive. I guess people busted. I was like, "No, I love it, man. It reminds me of my grandfather. I might get a little teary eyed." He's like, "Oh, okay." But and my wife says that too. Like she loves the smell of pipes, not so much cigars. And forget about cigarettes. Cigarettes is nasty. And now if you go to Queens, the official smell of Queens is pot. It is the worst. It is the worst. Yeah. We need to bring back smoking for pipes. Get rid of those stupid vapes. Yeah. I've been hearing vaping is like worse for your lungs than regular cigarette smoke.
Need some pipe weed.
Yeah, we should all be hobbits, just potatoes and pipe weed. I'm pretty anti-smoking. Smoking killed both my parents, so like, I told my wife, like, we're not getting married if you're still smoking. I'm not going through what my dad went through. So but I'm also, if you want to smoke, I'm do what you want. This is supposed to be a free country, but I'm just talking about myself. Like,
I remember my mother say when we were kids, my father used to smoke, and we would always, when they used to give out, matchbooks at, gas stations and everything else. And we'd collect all these matchbooks for my father. So you'd have matches. And my mother looked at us one day and she said, they say that every cigar that he smokes is one day off his life. So you count how many matches are in those books and how many days you're going to take off his life by giving us those. We never did it again. Like never.
I remember I told us it was 4th grade. And if I picture my mother in my head, she had you remember those brown Schlitz beer bottles that look like little barrels? She had a Schlitz beer, and a Kent King in the other, and then the crossword puzzle on the table. And that was my mom, doing her beer, like after everybody went to bed, drinking her beer, smoking a cigarette, doing the crossword puzzle. And I remember just sitting up late, talking to her, watching her smoke, and I was just like, "Mom, can I smoke?" And she was like, "Okay. I'm going to light it, though, because you're not allowed to play with matches." And I was like, "Oh, wow, my mom's going to let me smoke. How cool is my mom?" She lit the cigarette, gave it to me, and she was like, "Okay, exhale. Now inhale." And I was like, and I never touched the cigarette again. But my mom was smart enough to know me, that if she said no, I would have went and did it anyway, sneaking around, So she was smart enough to realize it sucked, It's like, and then in high school, friends like, we should all smoke, and they're all like that. I'm like, why do you want to do this? At least drinking beer felt good to get drunk. It felt good to get drunk, but smoking never had, like, there's no upside to smoking. I don't know. Like, you get addicted to it. Do you get high? Do you get buzz? I don't know. I never got past it. Yeah, my mom
It
was.
was, I think, I don't know if I remember my chemical imbalance thing correctly. It's for people who are stressed out because it blocks cortisol receptors in your brain. What it is.
Okay, so there is some sort of, I knew that there was nicotine that was a drug addiction, but I didn't know if it was like it affected the pleasure centers. And I know like a lot of women say it like suppresses the desire to eat. So like a lot of supermodels like are all smokers. And I don't know.
I heard
I
this
saw
too, Michael. Michael was saying that, yeah, the supposedly heavy metals and things in your lungs when you vape. I watched a couple of videos about something like that. So yeah, it is, I think, supposed to be worse than actual smoking.
Yeah, I just look at it as like, how old is vaping now? Is it 10 years old already? And like, I'm just wary of all new things, like, oh, this didn't exist. Now everybody's vaping. I'm like, this hasn't been around long enough to see this consequence.
Reminds me of the 1950s. You know, we see those old black and white things where they take the ladies into the beauty salon and they're applying radioactive paste to their face because they would cleanse it off really well. I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm sure those women are still alive.
I mean, what is it, Thamalda? The drug that they caused the flipper babies, Thamalcicine or something like that, or asbestos. It's funny because I just read Fantastic Four 13, and one of the monkeys, the red ghost shape changing monkey, turned into a lead blanket, an asbestos blanket wrapped around Johnny Storm, and I'm like, hey, that's when Johnny Storm got cancer, mesothelioma. And then Reed Richards had an asbestos suit so he could go and catch Johnny Storm. But and I remember doctors, we used to prescribe cigarettes to calm down.
Rex, John, and I are the masters of sidetracks.
Yeah,
just to let you know.
How did this turn from a discussion to one about? Have you met me, Rex? Dan Prager was just on, and I asked him a question about Image Comics, and then he's talking about meeting Snoop Dogg on Jay Leno. But that's why I call my conversations, because let's face it, you don't have like a straight line to a conversation. You meander. But yeah, RJ and I, if we don't have a guest, it's just like, did we talk about one day about like getting beatings as kids? Like, just,
oh yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, back my book. Will there be smoking in my book? I didn't think of that. I got to have a villain.
Well, if Renzo is doing it, I would assume there is smoking in the book. Renzo just likes to put smokers in the background, and it gives a little bit of action and something to do with people's hands and things like that.
It's funny because there's a character has a cameo. His name is Colonel Strong. He's like a patriotic superhero, and he's my friend's role-playing character. And all my friends got mad that I didn't put their role-playing characters in the comic, and I didn't think I had the right to do that. And they're like, no, we got. So I put cameos of all my friends' role-playing characters, and he draws, every time he draws Colonel Strong, he puts like a match or a cigarette in his mouth. So I have a story about him, and I think that's going to be like one of the little touches that is that he's a recovering smoker. He's like, yeah, I got a strong will, but I got it. I don't light it. It's just there. It's just there. I think that would be a funny little bit of banter.
It was one of the things I was working on when I was doing the Rampaging Thor book for the Valiant Heroes. I learned really quickly why, let's say Sergeant Rock has everybody with a different skin color and with funny uniforms and all that kind of stuff. Because if you're doing soldiers and they're all in fatigues, you got to find some way to actually distinguish between the two. And right. I did not, I had Mike Ustovich doing the art, and I really didn't think about that beforehand. And I had to try to get it better with when we put the skin tones in and things like that. But yeah, they got to have something that will distinguish them. And that's one of the things that Renzo does. He puts cigarettes in people's hands, like, for Pulse. And I didn't mind because Pulse basically can heal himself. So Pulse smokes, and he's always pulling cigarettes out of his jacket and smoking.
Yeah. I mean, think about that. Like the original Fantastic Four, they had uniforms, but they all had distinct silhouettes. And the original X-Men, the Beast was wider, Cyclops had the headgear, so if you're gonna have characters in uniform, you really, like, yeah, I didn't even think of that, but Sergeant Rock or Sergeant Fury comics. One guy was tall, one guy was fat. They
You had the Indian guy, the redskin. He always had the feather sticking out of his helmet. And
yeah.
the one thing that's funny about Sergeant Rock is that I never knew for years and years and years until way long after the entire thing was finished that he was a redhead, because he just kept his helmet on all the time.
It's funny. There's a cameo in the Patriarch story. I made up a character called Sergeant Stone, and I drew a picture, and I sent it to Renzo. But I can't draw, so it was just basically Sergeant Rock. And Renzo was like, "What is this character?" I go, "Sergeant Stone. It's if you take Sergeant Rock and Nick and Sergeant Fury and merge them together, but he's literally Rock." So, and he talks like his origin is he fighting in World War II, and he fell into the Rhine River, and he almost drowned. But the Rhine maidens rescued him and kept him like out of time and space, and then they finally found his body, and it was petrified in the water. They pulled him out. So he talks like a 40s war veteran movie,
That's funny. I'll give you the origin story of my character that is going to be introduced mostly in Thomas Valley #2, which is Major Mystery, because I basically the backstory of it was you had someone in World War II who was basically the unknown soldier. And then I don't know if you remember that awful Unknown Soldier miniseries in the 90s where he tried to pass on being the unknown soldier to this spy, which I just hated that. But the guy killed himself at the end. Spoilers. But my thought was, okay, if we had a character like that in the Second World War, and then he did pass it on to someone else, and then they passed it on to a third generation, which would be Major Mystery. That's my character like that.
Major Mystery. That's a good superhero name. I like that. That is cool. Did Nick Fury start out in a comic like Sergeant Rock? Yes. Nick Fury's first appearance
Howling Commandos, huh?
In the Howling Commandos #1, which I will be doing on a Sunday Comics one of these days. Yeah, so it was originally a war comic, and then when that ran its course, they brought him back as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., like 20 years later. Keep in mind, you didn't need like a super soldier serum back then because the war was over, and then it was like 1963 they had him in S.H.I.E.L.D. So he was what, like a 30-year-old sergeant, and now he's a 50-year-old leader in S.H.I.E.L.D. It worked. But now that World War II is 100 years ago, they gotta come up with like superhero stories why he's still vital and young, which is one of the detriments of having characters around for 80 years. Like how is Franklin Richards still only like 7 years old? But that's comic book time for you.
I tell you, I think that would be in my mind anyways, the best way to reboot the entire Marvel universe is to use Franklin Richards. Basically, I would say that the Fantastic Four Versus series, where Mephisto tried to kidnap him, he actually succeeded in kidnapping him, and the entire universe since that time has been just a construct in the mind of Franklin Richards, because he can make entire universes. That's how powerful he is.
Right. I'm a little, you would be a little, I wanted to tell you, at the end of James Robinson's run of the Fantastic Four, it starts out with there's an explosion at the Baxter Building, and all of these things escape the Baxter Building, and like, it just causes like a series of problems for the Fantastic Four. And, like, how does a group of private citizens have a rocket ship that launches from the middle of Manhattan? You buy that because you like the Fantastic Four, but it becomes like the people just like, you can't do this. Reed Richards, you have a portal to another dimension in the middle of Manhattan, and it gets into legal troubles. And at the point, all the stuff that I'm like, how can Reed Richards do? And now they're actually telling a story about it. And I was like, this isn't fun anymore. So be careful what you wish for. But, it's a comic book. They end up resolving everything. But one of the things that happened was the things that escaped were all of the Heroes Reborn characters. So that horrible version of Captain America that Rob Liefeld drew, and they were villains. And they had to basically go around and beat up all of the Heroes Reborn versions and bring them to justice. I thought that was great. All right. Finally, these characters are getting their faces smashed in, as rightfully so. Like one of the guys is like, look at me. Ben Grimm is standing. And he goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm standing out here looking at this ridiculous version of Hawkeye." And it was the Rob Liefeld version of Hawkeye with the bow and arrow at Ben Grimm.
Uh,
Yeah, but
I always think it was thinking about ridiculous things that made me choose some of the characteristics of my world, because I was reading at the time. It was a Red Circle Black Hood, and basically he was just chasing down somebody that had, I don't know, a bank robber or something like that. They were in a car, he was on his bike, and he goes over a cliff, and all of a sudden he falls into a cave, and then it's a entirely different world underneath there.
Yeah,
it's like ridiculous, but go with it.
Yeah. I love I have such an affinity for all those Red Circle characters. You know, it to me, like I don't want to do other people's characters. Like I wanted to work for Marvel when I was younger. Now I don't want to work for Marvel. You know, I'm satisfying my itch making my own comic. I don't want to use public domain characters, but I still have like a soft spot for those Red Circle and the Thunder Agents. Wouldn't that be cool to have a Thunder Agents Red Circle comic with both sets of teams?
When I talked to Mike one time, I don't know if we talked to him together or not, but I don't think it was on the channel. But I was talking to him, and he said that his characters, Justice Machine, were actually supposed to, if I remember correctly, do a tie-in story with the Red Circle characters, because he loved those characters and he wanted it to happen so much. And the people who own the other characters just pulled out at the last minute.
Oh, what a shame. Yeah, what a shame. Yeah, I love those Justice Machine characters. Yeah, I feel so bad. When Mike Gustovich was on my channel, we talked. He was just like, "Yeah, they're my babies, and they got taken away from me." And oh man, I just had such a wave of sadness. Just the way he said it just hit me right in the guts. You know, the Captain Marvel, Billy Batson is public domain. I love Billy Batson, Captain Marvel. He hasn't been done right. You know, the closest they got to it was the Jerry Ordway series, The Power of Shazam. But I just don't like, the movie was bad. I don't know. I told you that in the 90s I wrote like a what do they call it? A treatment for a pitch. I wrote a pitch for Captain Marvel, sent it to DC. Like, how arrogant was that? Like, here's how to fix Captain Marvel. You know, never heard from him.
I remember the old the image always pops into my mind. I think it's Neil Adams doing the cover where it's Superman punching Shazam, Captain Marvel. They're both punching each other at the same time. Beautiful cover.
Yeah. What was that? Was that World's Finest or Brave and Bold or one of
those? That was World's Finest, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Jerry Ordway and Neil Adams. And I would say John Byrne was another one who could draw Captain Marvel the best, besides the original guys.
Constantine says he's very much impressed by my feminism and progressivism destroying hobbies video. Thank you very much. This Wednesday streams we're trying to be positive, because my weekend streams are pretty negative sometimes. So we're just talking about comics here.
Poor RJ, he's trying to be positive and he has me on. Yeah, Captain Marvel Jr. I'm gonna bring up a piece of art then. Since you brought up Captain Marvel Jr., let me find it. But I guess we'll keep talking while I look for this art. But I have a character that's inspired by Captain Marvel Jr. He makes an appearance, and the card that Renzo drew and then Oscar colored got such a good reaction that I'm expanding his story. So in the second appearance of Mary Sue, which would be Heroic Tales 3, he's making I'm expanding his role because people just loved him. And of course, my computer is not obeying the commands that I give it. Obey my
Tony, I don't think Chuck actually owns Airboy, but I could be wrong on that.
It's public domain. Yeah, he was talking about he was on my channel recently, and he was talking about doing another Airboy story. He loves the character, and I tell you, I love all the stuff about Airboy. there. If you could share my screen. So this is King Fu. He's the world's greatest martial artist. And make no mistakes, he is a superhero. He has superpowers, and he's got a whole story that I can't spoil. But he makes a cameo appearance along with Sergeant Stone in the Patriarch story, and this is one of the stretch goal cards, and people flipped for this. So I'm expanding his role because you got to give the people what they want, and this is totally inspired by that legend of Elvis Presley going into the barber shop with the Captain Marvel Jr. comic right at the beginning of his career and said, "Make my hair look like this." That was the origin of Elvis's pompadour. So I was just like, all right, King Fu. So he's the world's greatest martial artist and an Elvis impersonator. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah. Oscar is, because in my mind he had the white Elvis costume, and Oscar the colorist goes, no, he's going to be gold and green like Iron Fist. I was like, okay. So there you go. So that's a stretch goal card. We got to hit that card. We got to hit the deal. Everybody back it so we can get a free stretch goal card. And for those of you, here's one of my cards right here. This is the back of all the cards. It has all the stats for villains, vigilantes. So if you are old like me and RJ, you might remember this role-playing game. It's a superhero version of like Dungeons and Dragons. I still play this all the time. Matter of fact, I'm playing Sunday. And then I asked for permission, and the guy said, yeah. So, like, here's Dr. Robug, and then on the back is all his stats. So if you buy these, if you buy my comics and get the cards, and you find a copy of Village Vigilantes, you could add them into your game. So there you go. So
I just gotta
make me small. I can't looking at my face like that. There you go. So that's King Fu. I just love that name, and what react. You got to see these cards that Renzo is just drawing. They're so good. Yeah, he says that, taking care of business. Keep on keeping on. He's a hunk of burning love is what he's going to say to Mary Sue. Yeah, I'm good. There's going to be a love triangle with Mary Sue and King Fu and another character. So there you go. And for Heroic Tales 4, I was already telling Renzo I want to make the cover look like an old 50s romance comic, with like a whole bunch of words, the two characters.
The woman is tilted backwards.
Yep.
Yep. Like I can see it right now.
Yep. I can't. Yeah, that's why we got to get the sales up so I can make Heroic Tales 3.
Oh yes, just let everybody know if you don't know already. I should have said this at the first, but the link for John's comic is in the description of this video. So if you want to go over and hit that link and go on over to what we're looking at right here and order John's book, it is $10.
Yeah,
so just let y'all know.
And $10 gets you 2 covers. It's a flip book. So you're gonna get the this cover that we're looking at right here is Josh Howard drawing Mary Sue and Jose Garcia drawing the Patriarch and the Subterranean. But when you get the comic, the cover, if you scroll up a little bit, you can see how it looks. Scroll it up. Right there, you see how it's. So when you read the Patriarch story, you're going to read the Patriarch story. Then when that's over with, Mary Sue story will be upside down. You flip it over, and you bag and board it to which way you want to be in the front. And I didn't want to put 4 variants and charge everybody $10 just for a different cover, because I was going to put original artwork on the back cover anyway, because no offense to Comics Wellspring, I want to have my art on my comic. I don't want to have an ad for them. So they'll give you a better price if you advertise their company. And again, they're great customer service. They do great work, but I just want my comic book to be all of my stuff. So I was going to pay to have a cover on the back anyway. So I was like, all right, let's make a flip book. Some people say I'm crazy for, you're cutting your sales in half. I don't know. Your thoughts on the Superman trailer?
I have not actually seen the new Superman trailer yet.
Yep.
But I wanted to ask you, John, I was going to ask, when you were talking about the flip book, here's an interesting sidetrack question for you. What is the weirdest, let's say, doesn't even have to be from the 90s, but cover variant? Because I think in the 90s, you got the really weird cover variants and weird things going on with those that you can remember. I think it was, for me, there was, I don't know if it was the Elementals or it was just the company that made the Elementals at the time. They basically took their books and they stacked them all and then shot a gun through the middle of like shot a bullet like straight through the middle of the books, and they would be sold with the gun hole, the shot
Really?
in them. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I could see like the coolness factor of it, but I don't want my book to be damaged, so I wouldn't buy it. But that is insane. Like Kiss did the blood, if you remember that,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Kiss put the blood in the ink. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they supposedly said. The glow in dark covers. Remember that with the cutouts. So like, like you open it up and you can see like claws look like Wolverine actually cut through.
Yeah, it's Wolverine, probably number 50 or 49 or something like that.
I'm not too crazy about those trick covers. To me, all they really did was make the comics more expensive. I like the cover art, and call me cheap or whatever, but it's like I want the comics to be as inexpensive as possible. Myself, my comics, and everybody else's comic. But if you want to pay, like if there was two versions of it, I would get the normal version. Like that's just me. Like I don't need the die cover, glossy, reflective, radioactive glow in the dark cover. I want just the paper.
Yeah, it's funny because my brother showed up probably about a month ago and going through my books again, and he keeps on finding new things and new things in my collection. He goes, and this is that kind of variant cover, and this is that kind of variant cover. And I'm like, I really don't care. It's like I just want to read it.
Yeah. I'm like I opened up my Death of Superman because I wanted to read it, and I bought one copy. I put it back in the bag, and then I put the bag in the bag and board because it came with the comic. But comics are for reading. Like I
probably have 20 copies of that at least because I was working that day at the comic shop when it came out. They needed extra hands. It's like, all right, these are the ones that didn't sell. Okay. I'll take some of those.
Mark Rudenwald has his ashes mixed in the ink. Yep, I remember that. Yep. Yeah, because he became really attached to that. That was a really good series. The first Squadron Supreme 12-issue series. That was like, Marvel's response to the Watchmen. That was a good series. I really liked it. And the Squadron Supreme was a goof on the Justice League. I always thought it was funny that Marvel Comics has two Superman analogs flying around and you never hear from them. There's the good Hyperion and there's the evil Hyperion. Aren't they both on Earth, Marvel Earth, flying around causing, at least I can't think of the guy's name. Jonathan Hickman put him on the Avengers.
I'm sure they probably got rid of Counter Earth by now, have they? Because the Squadron Supreme was supposed to be from a different Earth that revolves around the sun the exact opposite time our Earth revolves around it, so we can't see it.
Yeah, Counter Earth. Now I think they just regulate them to other dimensions. Other variants. It's lazy. You could just you can make anything. Just call it a variant from another. All right, so you killed off Daredevil. Now we just go grab another one. He's from a different dimension, and then you could have an excuse to change him and make him what you think is right, not what Jack Kirby thinks is right. That's what gets me. I call it lifting your leg on the character. You take Reed Richards and Fantastic Four, and then they're variants. Because I know better than Stan and Jack. Yeah, from history, the people at DC who brainstormed killing Superman via Doomsday got threats from fans. They even had to make funerals. Yep, I remember it made the newspaper, and a lot of people were coming up to me. You're the comic book guy. What do you think? And this was the first time. What year was he? What year was that? The death of Superman. But this was the first time that I was aware of a stunt. That was a publicity stunt. I was like, they're not killing Superman. And I even called it. I said, they're going to put him in some sort of Kryptonian trance and he's going to come back after a while. He's not dying. And that's exactly what happened. And I thought it was a cheap stunt, and I kind of was like resentful for it. I was like, who do they think I am? Like, kill the character. Because I remember I had this friend named Andy Ryan. I still have us. We're still friends. And I remember bringing comics to school because that's how cool I was, ladies and gentlemen. I brought comic books to school to be friends in 4th grade. Yeah, that worked. And I handed them out to people. I remember specifically Marvel Team Up, I think it was 92. It was Spider-Man and Nightcrawler. And I'm handing them out to read. And Andy was like, I don't like comic books. The superhero is going to win, so what's the big deal? And he's like, and if they die, they just come back. And I had no counter to that. I was like, so when Superman died years later, I was like, Andy's absolutely right. And it made me a little resentful for comics for a bit.
That's why people die in my universe and they stay dead.
Yep. If people die in my comic, they're dead. I'm not above doing that. The villain falls off the cliff and the superhero looks and goes, that's the last time we'll see Dr. Menace. And then 6 issues later, Dr. Menace goes, you fool. If you see the body, if he's dead, they're dead. But villainous trickery is villainous trickery. But if they're dead, they're dead. And there are other dimensions in my comics, but like I said, they follow different rules of physics. So it's impossible for there to be another RJ. It's impossible for there to be another John's Longbox because the laws of physics are different. Like all these coincidences have to line up to make me. That can't happen when things are different. I'm not going to explain the nature of my universes on RJ's channel.
And you always have Doombots.
Yeah, Doombots. Yeah, Doombot. Yeah, everything's a Doom. Kill Dr. Doom. That's a Doombot. I always thought it was cool when John Byrne was writing, and he goes to the Doombot, and he's like, "Where did you get the scratch?" He goes, "Oh, the mutant Wolverine struck a match there." And he goes, "Oh, so how did you destroy Wolverine for this affront to the percentage of Dr. Doom?" He goes, "I didn't. I did." And then boom, the robot explodes. Dr. Doom is not going to let Wolverine strike a match on a Doombot. I thought that was cool. Zach Dan says, evil doctors get their doctorates removed. That would never happen. It's funny that you say that because a character that is named but isn't really explored upon has a doctorate in mad science, multi-advanced disciplines. So there is a university in My Heroic Tales world where you can actually become a mad scientist. He's got multiple advanced doctorates. Mad science. Because I just think that's a funny idea. And I want to spoil this. I had RJ, have you ever had just like you wake up and you're like, I read something online. Believe it or not, Twitter actually gave me a really, really good idea. And I got so excited about it. I rewrote a script. And I just want to tell people about it, but I can't because it's too good of an idea. And I don't want to spoil this. Have you ever had anything like that? You're dying to tell somebody?
Oh yeah, first time was Valiant and the Crown the Destroyer. I was just bursting at the seams trying to keep that in when I was working on it.
And it's funny because I tell my wife and she goes, "Okay, that's cool. What do you want for dinner?" You don't appreciate my genius. She's like, "Yeah, your genius can take out the garbage." I just got another notification. Somebody bought. Thank you, people. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Every bit helps. Every bit helps because this comic is coming out. Doesn't matter. It's paid for. Renzo's, like I said, about 55% done. I got the ads already paid for, and I commissioned. Oh, you were talking about homage covers. I commissioned a second printing for Heroic Tales 1 cover, and I don't like homage covers. To me, it cheapens your work. You're like, my book isn't good enough. I want to reference somebody else. But for second printing, I don't mind an homage cover because I already have the cover, if that makes sense. But the homage cover is nothing you've ever seen before in comics. So I can't wait for the reveal for that. It's going to be so cool. So,
and this Heroic Tales glass is going to be the equivalent of Empire Strikes Back glasses that you got at Burger King. You know,
like this. Do you remember these?
I don't remember those ones.
Slurpee cups from 7-Eleven. You don't remember these? This is John Buscema's Odin.
Oh yeah.
I got this cup. This was the cup that held my family's toothbrushes in, so I will not be drinking from this cup like 30 years. And it's like, this is why Odin is my favorite fictional character of all time, because of this cup that's been in my house for 40, 50 years, you know, probably close to 50 years, you know. Yeah. So you too could buy a Heroic Tales pint glass and put your toothbrush in it for 50 years. In your comic, any cameo of yourself in a crowd? I know if Renzo draws me in, that would be kind of funny. But I will say that there's friends that I'm putting in. I already spoiled it, but Tonic Bowl, believe it or not, is going to be like, I have a whole story based on Tonic Bowl. He does the comic Saving the Universe. Somebody called him Dollar Store Jim Morrison, and I just thought that was the funny thing. So there is a store in Science City called Dollar Store Jim's, and that store is going to be a major plot point. So Tonic Bowl and his wife will be in the comics. Spoiler alert, Thomas Valiant and Wolf and Batsy kind of show up in issue 2. I hope you remember you said that was okay, RJ.
Yeah.
But they show up, but they don't really show up. I'm being vague on purpose, cheeky, so you buy the comic and find out. Oh, I got it. Somebody else. Thank you, RJ. Your crowd. I love you got the best crowd in comic books. How's that? Until I go on another show. No,
we're the new Bancroft bump here at the Comic Book Team Up. Yes.
Yeah,
we'll get you some skit sales.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I didn't get to say this while Dan was on. Dan was talking about like anybody can make comic books. You know, we got so many resources and everything like that. And I would like to add that we got so many helpful people. I never would have made a comic book without RJ.
Definitely. Same with me. And when I just talking about Bancroft, went on his show and he said, here, take this. This is the PDF of what you need to do in order to do bang, bang, bang. It's like, wow, thank you.
Yeah. Like I at the risk of, is the word maudlin? Is that the word or sanguine? I forget what the fancy word is. But during COVID, I just started making YouTube videos because people were being crazy and I wanted to talk to people about comic books. And then I just started meeting people. I think I'm pretty good at talking to people. And then I made friends with people and they all given me advice. And a lot of people donated time to help me make issue number 1. Again, I never would have made it without Renzo. I never would have made it without Nick Axe, Brian Bao, Fabrizio Aiello, Matt Barr, all these people. And of course, Renzo and Oscar and Daniel, Dave Brink of Genuine Comics. He gave me advice and helped me out and pointed me to good people. So it is, as much as we hear all this nastiness, if you tune out the nastiness, there is just so many genuine, helpful people, that I'll hold my Oscar now. And I'd like to thank the Academy. I sound like Sally Fields. They like me. But there's so many good, helpful people. If you could focus past all the true nastiness. And again, I'm being vague on purpose. Kids, if you want to be super stretchy like Thomas Valiant, eat your gummy vitamins. Yes. That's a secret origin. Oh, I spoiled it, RJ. Damn it.
Did you have a Stretch Armstrong when you were a kid, John?
I had Stretch Monster. That was cooler than Stretch Armstrong was a guy in underwear. Stretch Monster was a freaking deep one.
And didn't he yell? I think I can't remember. The
but
monster one was supposed to make a yelling noise when you stretched him, I thought.
Oh, really? Mine was broken. And then every kid sooner or later got tired of them and cut them open to see what was inside. It was like a silicone gel. The coins will be when the apocalypse happens, these will be legal tender. These Heroic Tales coins. They're about the size of a quarter. One side says Heroic Tales, one side has the comic symbols. I love these coins. Canada has Tim Hortons, not so much 7-Eleven. There's no 7-Elevens in Canada?
They have other kinds of stores that are basically 7-Elevens. I can't remember what they're called.
I know they have Tim Hortons, and Tim Hortons is my go-to cup of coffee. Tim Hortons just opened up down the block from me. I freaking love Tim Hortons coffee. So let's hope that it's not tariffed. I don't want to pay more. Oh, Ryan
Oh,
Banks has a question. RJ and I'm sorry, I'm taking over your show. I keep forgetting it. Why do you not see an occasional resurrection of a character as a great twist when the Bible includes because not every character is Jesus. If your name is Phoenix, you're allowed to come back from the dead, which drives me nuts that they made this whole convoluted story to bring her back from the dead when it was built into the name of the character. But other than that, I don't like resurrection. You know, I'll buy it if you're a robot and they rebuild you. I'll even buy it if you're like an alien and we just don't understand your metabolism and we thought you were dead, you know, time travel. But like if you're dead, you're dead. And I think it cheapens the drama of like, all right, the patriarch got his face exploded. They're burying him in the comic, but you know, 3 issues later, he's going to be back. You know,
my answer to that question, Ryan, is probably along the lines of what you were thinking of when you asked that question. 4 last things are death, judgment, heaven, and hell. So, you know, you die, you're going to be judged, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think it's a crutch. I think it's like the multiverse. It's just easy to pull stuff out of your butt and change a mistake that you made. So if you don't use a multiverse, and if you say dead is dead, I think it forces you to think about what you're gonna do. Like I hate to dump on the guy, but Richard C. Meyer, he killed off all his characters in the second appearance, you know, and then he made a really mess of a comic, bringing them all back. And to me, I lost interest in Jawbreakers because of that, you know. So
well, that was actually one of the reasons why people die in my comic. Like they die, they're dead. It's like, no, you die, you're dead. I'm sorry.
right.
As much as you screwed up doing the second book, I gotta put a line here in the sand and say, no, you die, you're dead, and that way it makes some consequences. And I actually, when I was doing Thomas Valley #1, I was trying to do too many things at the same time. But you know, you do meet characters that pass on the baton, basically, of what a dead character is going to have, like an heir or a son or someone who wants to take over, you know, things like that. I'd say it makes it much more of a dynamic universe.
I do agree. Like, is your comic going to age in real time?
Yes and no. They do age in real time. That's why if we look at Thomas, you know, Valiant Heroes, it has the wrong date on it. People kept telling me it has the wrong date on it. I'm thinking, no, it doesn't have the wrong date on it, because I think it's like 2022 or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. Is because that's when it's set, right?
Right.
That's the timeline. It does age in real time, but there's going to be time jumps. So we're going to move forward and backwards. It's also the reason why we have like Fade to Blue and things like that. You have your timeline in the front, it's going to say 1929. You know, Crown Destroyer is 50,000 BC or something like that.
I see. I took you were explaining that in a previous comic book team up, and I'm like, yep. So I actually put an exact day and year in Heroic Tales #1, and I'm going to keep doing that. I kind of like that. So because I started out with the patriarch. He's been a superhero for 20 years, and then in patriarch #1, it's going to talk about his origin. So I want to put dates and stuff like that. So I put a date on Mary Sue. So you're going to see that issue 2 of Heroic Tales is literally the day after Heroic Tales #1, the patriarch story. You know what I mean? So like you could see how ragged this guy's getting, because it's just now it's nonstop. It's nonstop. So you know, I'm leading up to something like, is he going to get exhausted and make a mistake, or things like that. So,
it's also one of the reasons why, you know, people complain about how do I read all of this stuff in Marvel and things like that. Like, I don't even know what order to go in. And one of the reasons why I came up with my dating system was because if I ever get to a point where I have so many books out there that it's confusing, if you want to read them in order, all you got to do is look at the date that the timeline is in, and that's all you do. You know, it doesn't matter what number it has on it. Look at the date of the timeline, and it'll be everything in that timeline is before or after that, and you'll be able to tell.
Yeah, like so like when you said yes and no, like my comics, they're going to age in real time, but when Heroic Tales #2 comes out, it's still set in 2024. You know what I mean? So when I make a comic book that's set in 2025, the kids will be a little bit older. So it's going to be tough because the patriarch's got 7 kids. You know, so we're going to have to age them up and things like that. But I think that I like that continuity. I that's fun to me, crossing all the T's, dotting the I's, and making sure that everything fits in and everything. Like, again, I was just about to spoil something again. Marcus keeps reminding me, John, stop spoiling all your comics. Superman had the triangles for the reading order when it became a mess. Yeah. When they had all those crossovers, I think they did that.
That was after they brought him back to life.
Yeah, because they had they had like
Red and Blue Superman
titles, 3 Superman titles, and then all the ancillary Superman titles, and they're all crossovers. It got to be a mess. I'll never be able to make that many comics where I'll lose track of it. So that's one good thing about being a small timer.
It's funny, John. I was doing my video last week when it was just me on my channel, and I was going over characters and old Avengers books and all these kind of things, right? And I was getting things wrong. I always know I'm getting things wrong. I don't have that good a memory, and I don't have the patience to go look everything up while I'm talking about them. And I got some guy in the comments like half a week later saying, You're giving me a heart attack. I just want to reach through the screen and punch you. You got so many things wrong about, Danny Keach and Danny Rand and what Shang-Chi and when he was in the Avengers. And I'm going, man, you missed the entire point of that video. It's like, make comics fun again.
Right. Yeah. I do the same thing, but for anybody who makes a YouTube channel, talking, because right now I'm doing more than talking. I'm trying to have like a presenter's voice. I'm trying to be entertaining. So sometimes I slip up and I'll say the wrong name or the wrong date. Fortunately, most of the people that watch me understand, it's a slip of the tongue or a momentary lapse or whatever. And then I got Marcus Kellegrew, usually as my moderator. He's your moderator too, who'll correct my mistakes. Talk about a guy who has a encyclopedic knowledge of comics. As much as I know about comics, Marcus lived it. He knows the people beyond the comics. So that's good. Yeah. Michael, forgive me for not pronouncing your last name. A way to bring back dead characters to life is to make them clones. I have a big problem with clones.
Same.
A clone doesn't have your memories, and like, so, okay. So for the sake of argument, Patriarch gets killed, and then before he dies, they take out some cells and they make a clone of him. The way I understand cloning would work is now you have a baby Patriarch. When you clone your dog, you don't have a dog at the same age that knows all the tricks that you taught it and knows your house. You know what I mean? And it's just a puppy dog that's genetically the same. So if you made a clone of the Patriarch, you'd have a little Patriarch baby. And also in my world, it wouldn't have any powers because the powers come from the mind.
Reminds me of the only really good episode of Deep Space Nine I ever watched, I think, was where a guy tried to frame someone for murder in order to get revenge on them. But what he did was he created a clone of himself, and then he murdered the clone himself and then put all the evidence to make it point to this other person. And they arrested him at the end and said, you murdered somebody. It doesn't matter if he's your clone. You still murdered him.
Yeah. The whole power of it's like, what's his name? Madrox, the multiple man. I have a character. I have no intention to putting him in the comics yet. Maybe if I get to 20 issues. His name was Polyman, and he basically could make Molly. And I'm always thinking about like the theological ramifications of this. Like when he dismisses his duplicates, is he murdering individuals? Like that to me would be the story that I'd want to tell of a guy whose power is like self-cloning. Does he mind control them? Do they have individual will? What happens if one wanted to break off? Does he have the right to reabsorb it? To me, that's kind of interesting. I like exploring that kind of stuff about superpowers.
Yeah, and they did that really well in the Larry Stroman run of X Factor, because that was one of the subplots, was that Madrox had a clone or a version of himself that got lost and actually started to have his own life outside of Madrox, and then came back and absorbed Madrox.
Oh wow. I think I don't have. Well, that doesn't sound familiar. The Venture Brothers did the best version of clones. The Venture Brothers did clones right. Like they actually had to feed into the memories and things like that. Did you watch the Venture Brothers, RJ?
No, sorry.
It's so good. It's so good. Deep Space Nine wasn't an action show; it was a straight. I'm sorry, I keep reading it like I'm the host because I see my comic on here and everything. Deep Space Nine wasn't an action show; it was a straight drama. Fans wanted more spaceships flying around. Fair enough. Yeah. People get mad when I say this, but I watched I struggled through the first season of Deep Space Nine, and I just stopped halfway through the second season. I know it gets better later, but with my personality, I can't just jump to the good stuff. So I'm struggling to get to the good stuff.
When I'm thinking about clones too, and the whole what things happen, and the whole exploration of one of them dying, also makes me think of, I don't know if it's Keith Giffen or not, that went into the storyline where Triplicate Girl, one of her actually got killed, and she had became Duo Damsel.
Yeah. That was a good run. Poor Legion of Superheroes. They never recovered from the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Them and Infinity Incorporated just got gutted. I think Jeff Johns tried to fix them with the three legions. They took all the version of the Legion of Superheroes and tried to marry them together. But I don't know.
There was a good character that came out of that. Kinetics, I think, was the best character that came out of the post Crises Summit Infinite Earths, Legion of Superheroes, but it's never a character that I've seen since then, which I think is probably a good thing. I love that character though.
Yeah. And they did clones, right?
The entire Second Legion was clones.
Yeah, those clones of them. I think clones are another trope, a misused trope. It's just another way out of consequences. I like consequences. Consequences and dealing with consequences will give you good stories. So finding ways out of consequences, to me, just like lessons. Even as a kid, when Obi-Wan Kenobi died and then he showed up as a ghost, I was like, so then he's not dead. You know what I mean? Like Obi-Wan Kenobi should have been gone, and Luke's mentor was gone, and he had no help, and now he has to live up to the memory of this guy and learn everything on his own. But now he's just got a ghost that just shows up and tells him everything he needs to do. To me, that lessened the drama of Star Wars. I believe Spider-Man should have both organic webbing from his hands and stronger synthetic in his web shooters. What do you think?
Spider-Man 2099 does actually have organic webbing.
It's funny because as a kid, I guess I was a weird kid, but I was just like, how did Peter Parker make the web shooters? If he's that much of a genius, how is he broke? Because just think of he would be a billionaire. That is a great invention. Police would be using it. It would be like just think of all the uses for that. So like, if he's smart enough to do that, but he's not smart enough to like finish college. And so the organic web shooters kind of make sense, but it's kind of gross at the same time to think about it. So it didn't bother me in the movies, but it did bother me in the movies because I'm a crazy person. Superhero fans are the worst. We're never happy with our movies. Has there ever been a superhero?
So many years of disappointing movies. Just if you grow up in the 80s, in the 70s, 80s, or 90s.
Has there been a superhero movie that you were just completely satisfied with?
Completely satisfied? I wouldn't say completely, no. I mean, I when I watched Captain America, the First Avenger, right? It was like that hit every point of Captain America that it should have hit. But to me, it was like, yeah, but I already know that story. It was boring.
I'll say the original Iron Man movie, the first one was flawless as far as I was concerned. Like the changes that they made sense. They couldn't have him as a Vietnam vet. It just, not without metahuman abilities to stay young and everything. So they did a great job with that. The Captain America movie was awesome. The the first Spider-Man, with the exception of the web shooters, that wasn't enough to ruin the movie. The second Spider-Man movie I really liked, and the Doctor Strange movie was phenomenal. They changed just enough because it was an 8-page second tier story in a comic book when it came out, but I was like, no way is Doctor Strange going to be any good. And I thought the Doctor Strange origin movie was outstanding. The first Thor movie, I really liked it. They took a lot of liberties with Thor, but I liked it. It was like looking at Kirby's Asgard and everything. But then post Infinity Wars, I just don't care. It's like joke a minute, goofy, But
honestly, I think the only superhero movie that I've consistently watched over and over again would be Superman the movie.
That's a piece of art. That's cinema. That's not even a movie. You know what I mean? There's a difference. Yeah, that is really good. And of course, I didn't include that in my list of movies. That's because Lex Luthor as the scary real estate agent just didn't work for me. I know Larry Hagman just died, and it's don't speak ill of the dead, but I didn't like the Lex Luthor. Like, he should have been more menacing, and yeah, he's fired a nuclear missile and everything like that. But like the whole, I'm the scary real estate, and the other crap that I get is I didn't like the Tim Burton Batman movies. Those weren't Batman.
No, I remember, quite honestly, even it was, what was it? The year before they played that, we used to go and watch the old Batman, like the old Batman movies, in just a rundown old theater around the block from the actual theater, right? I was like, is this any better? I'm not entirely sure.
Talking about being corrected, Logic Finder says Gene Hackman, not Larry Hagman. Did I say Larry Hagman? That would have been funny, Major Healy or Major Nelson as Lex Luthor. And I would have lived in Otisburg, dirty old fatty. If he was the mayor, Ned Beatty never bothered me. And I will say, what's her name? Miss Taskmaster was the sexiest thing of the 70s. Oh my God, was she beautiful. To the point you're like, I hope my parents aren't around when I'm watching Superman. And speaking of sexy, I got some this scene. I actually told it, like, in the script it was a little bit more chaste, and what Renzo sent me, I had to have him throw that blanket on. And then this scene of her in the shower, I explicitly told her how I wanted her to be posed, so that Renzo's drawing sexy ladies, so I got to get some word balloons in there. But what they're doing is he's basically saying, I'm taking the day off. I'm beat up. I'm going to stay home. I'm kind of rough. And she's like, oh, good. We're going to, the kids I want to see you. I'm going to make breakfast. So right after breakfast, we'll wake up the kids and blah. And as she comes out of the shower, he's gone because he made the dumb mistake of turning on the news. And what's going on here? The bad mayor, Lucius Kane, the suit, he's basically saying, Martin's been in this hole for 18 hours. Where's the patriarch? Where's the because they can't really, if you see these stories about kids down in the well's going to collapse. So that, they can't really get down there with the equipment. So they're like, where's the patriarch? So he's taken, as politicians do. And then the patriarch, so Regina says, where were you? And the patriarch's going to be like, well, I was occupied. What were you doing? And like, he's going to be like looking around like, I can't tell you what I was doing. But let's just put it this way. He has 7 kids. He loves his wife. They're a loving couple. They do what mommies and daddies do when they're down on the farm and they don't have cable. Zach 10 says, no patriarch symbol light. It's funny that you should say that, because I'm going to play with that idea. And I have like I want to get to like at least Patriarch 5 before this whole comic book thing falls through, because I got so many cool ideas that I want to talk about. How to, things that superheroes must do for logistics wise to be a superhero, and keeping his kids out of harm's way. Like I'm dancing around the point, because there's a reason why the patriarch's wife is scarred, and there's a reason why they all live on a farm away from Science City. If I'm telling you without directly telling you. So the patriarch has to do things to keep people from figuring out where his family is, because let's face it, if the Joker knew where Batman lived, Alfred would know no peace. The milkman, the postman would know no peace.
I have an answer for you, Ryan. Ryan says, what would happen if our characters go back in history? There is no time travel in my books. There are no aliens, and there is what's the third one? Well, there's no time travel and there's no aliens. And there's no multiverse. Basically, no multiverse, although that's very difficult to explain the way things work. But no, I don't have any going back in history. We have tie-ins from historical things in my books. Basically like swords that you're going to see that are in the ancient books and then in the new books, stuff like that, but no time travel. I don't know, but how about you, John?
This time travel, issue 4 it's funny that you say that, because it's Heroic Tales is split with 2 characters. I'm going to introduce my time travel character, and I'm going to introduce a multi-dimensional, meaning a character from another dimension. So I'm doing the time space continuum issue if number 4. And if I may say so, I think my character, the female character that I'm going to introduce in number 4, is going to be my breakout character. This is going to be the character that people who don't know anything about the scene, they're going to be like, wait a minute, I like that character. So, so let's get to issue 4. But anyway, I'm going to explain how time travel works. You can't change the past. You can't go back in time and kill Hitler. Why? Because there's one timeline. And, I'm probably going to hurt people's brains when I explain how time travel works, but that's the way it's going to be. So, and then my other character is going to explain how the multiverse works. Other dimensions may exist, but they're different. And because they're different, they're not populated with the same people. There's only one patriarch. There's only one Mary Sue. Unfortunately, there's only one King Fu, and that's the way it is. Yeah. The way I describe my superhero world is it's superheroes meets Dungeons and Dragons with a dash of H.P. Lovecraft. You could see a lot of D&D inspirations,
Same with mine. At the end of Thomas Valley number 1, he looks like a gelatinous cube.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you could look at this cover right now and you could see 2 directly inspired D&D monsters. The mushroom people and that toad creature are right from the Fiend Folio, if you have the Fiend Folio 2nd edition.
I do. I was just looking through it the other day.
I love the Fiend Folio. Dimensional travel versus particle time travel. One can't change, the other can. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with somebody who just bought my comic, but like everybody, that's one of the things about making your own universe is you get to make the rules. I will say that there is like a cosmic cube type thing, and that's the exception to the rule. That could change the past. So that is like a something that if I get to like issue 12, 15, that'll be like a cosmic storyline where they're looking for the one object that could literally change the past. But if you build the mad scientist time machine and you're going to go back and kill your parents, you go back into the timeline, and what you do is you fray off like a thread of our timeline, and you make a little loop, and then that loop breaks off, and now you got a little bubble, and that's called a paradox. And you're just living 50% of your time. Time is going forward, and then you go backwards, and then you go forward, and you're living in this fragile soap bubble pocket time dimension. And if anything from the outside world goes into it, it pops, and you're basically lost in time and space, where you're instantly going to die because there's no pressure, there's no air, things like that. So time traveling is very dangerous, very sticky, and you don't want to get caught in a paradox. So anybody observing from the outside world, you turned the switch and just disappeared. You're basically dead. You know what I mean? So if you go to and try to purposely create a paradox, you're basically erasing yourself. The moment you hit the switch, you're gone. But if you go back in time and avoid yourself, and you know what I mean, that's fine, because you're not creating a paradox, which means it already happened. If that makes sense. So Like if you go back into caveman time and you meet a little caveman lady and you make little caveman babies, that's the way it happened. That happened already. You can't change the past. There's only one past. If you know, if it's remembered, it happened. Kind of like the 12 Monkeys. That's my favorite time travel movie.
I actually go in the exact opposite direction than that when I come up with stories. Just to, I can't remember whose question it was, but I have, like, I think you can probably realize this from looking at my stories, but one of my older brothers is a soldier. And, you know, if I have, you know, army questions or something like that, it's like, tell me how this would work and all that kind of stuff. I just ask him the questions and he'll say this way, this way, this way. But I also have another older brother who has degrees in particle physics.
Oh
So I was
wow.
like, how would this work? He said, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work at all.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool to actually talk to somebody with a degree in basically mad science. It's to a real regular person. That is cool. Let me ask you something. I've been I talk about how I create superhero characters, and like it's just the way I do it. I'm not the authority or anything like it, but I come up with a name. Either I hear a name at work or I read something, and I'm like, that sounds like a good name for a superhero. And then everything falls from that. Like the powers have to bolster that name, the suit has to bolster that name, the symbol. How do you make superhero characters? What is your method?
Because of comic books, everything to me is visual, like everything. Okay. And, you know, I had people, we were playing a game one time and they're always putting music on the background. We played this game where they started putting on instrumentals music and they'd say, RJ, tell me what you visualize in your head when we play this. Right. And they would play a song and I would have it for them within 5 seconds. Right. This is the image that pops into my mind. So what I do is when I see something that's visually stunning to me, that looks like a good story, but is not actually explored, I take that and I say, I want to make a story out of that. And I usually extract it from wherever I see it and just make my own story around it. And from that flows the entire thing. Usually, since the visual's already there, I have a lot of connection to where I would go with names and stuff like that, because, you know, you have basically within, let's say, my Artemis book, there's going to be a whole bunch of different kinds of schools with students in it that are going to have superpowers and make up small little teams and things like that. And I have a very specific reason why I did that and where it came from and all these kinds of things. But they have exacting connections to things in the real world that you might never actually be able to pinpoint down and say, draw it back to that. But to me, it explores the entire thing for names, uniforms, everything, because I have a visual. Everything comes off the visual.
Okay, like Thomas Valiant, your signature superhero character. Did you come up with the name first? I knowing you, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Did you come up with the name first, and then the powers, and then the costume, or you know,
Thomas Valiant, I dreamed up Thomas Valiant literally as a character came out of a dream, and I wanted to make him the virtuous hero that I saw, and I thought to myself, okay, if we're going to go public domain idea, but not actually public domain connection, I would say he would be basically a descendant of Prince Valiant.
Okay, okay. So if you know that character by called Miss Tree, MS period Tree,
Yes,
you know, Miss Tree, she is unofficially the daughter of Joe Friday from Dragnet. Like the character's name is Michael Friday, even though she's a female, her name is Michael, which is funny because she married a man named Michael. But that's like one of the things in the comic. But he doesn't say it's official, like he doesn't put it in the comic. But if you talk to what's his name, Max Allen Collins and Beatty, Scott Beatty, if you talk to them in a convention, they'll tell you, yeah, like, but they don't own Joe Friday. So is that the way it is? Like Thomas Valiant is the descendant of Prince Valiant?
exactly. It's never going to actually come up, but it's in my
Okay.
mind. It's like that character or a character with that name back in the past would be his descendant, and that's why he is brought up with very, let's just say, old ideas. But he's an old character, anyways.
Okay, cool, cool. Like you dreamt of a guy stretching around and stuff like that. That's why he has stretching.
Yes, unfortunately, I had done one too many videos on Miss Marvel and the whole Son Amanat thing. This was years and years ago. Right now, I was thinking, I fell asleep thinking, how would I make a good character with powers like that? And it just came to me in a dream.
Okay, it's funny because as I was reading your comic, he stretched and he got into like he was like a backpack or underneath the cape of one of the Kit Fox's the one of the J's, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm like RJ, his mass didn't change. You know, he's what 180 pounds, 200 pounds. How did he do this? How did this kid not know that 200 pounds of mass is? And then I get the card, and the card says one of the things of it, you know, one of his powers is density. He could change his mass. I was like, RJ, good for you. You did it right. I'm so proud of you.
which is why when you get into the second chapter, he changes his mass into basically a solid block of stone
Right.
in order to tether himself to the corner while he's directing
That
everybody.
makes him vastly powerful. He could stretch and he could change his mass. That is, you know, Reed Richards can't change his mass. He can only shift his mass, you know. But Reed Richards' main power is his intelligence. Is Thomas Valiant super intelligent?
No, no,
No,
not
right?
at all. No, quite the opposite. Not that he's a dumb person, but his intelligence is linked to his abilities, basically.
Right. Like the patriarch, people ask, like, I have his stats. Like his intelligence isn't genius level. Like he's a clever guy. He was a paramedic before he became a superhero, so he's not a dummy. But he's not the guy that's going to figure out how to defibrilize the Whoozy Watsits machine, and you know what I mean. Like that's more Mary Sue. She's in the nature of the character. She's perfect, so she's going to be the smartest, you know, kind of thing. But
It's actually one of the story elements in Thomas Valley number 2, talking about his mental state. It's because of the fact that since he's so elastic, um, his mental state can now. It's very difficult for him to actually learn new things
oh,
because it
really?
always goes back to the very. Basically, it always snaps back to the same state when he comes back to like a human form. Right? It goes back to the same state so much that even his brain patterns don't change.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. That's a pretty clever weakness. I don't think I've ever I don't think I've ever seen a character that did that. Like I've had in my role playing games, I made up like an android character that just it can't get experience, it can't level up, and it can't, you know, boost its stats because it doesn't have the capacity for learning. You know, it's not intelligent. It's just programmed like an animal. Like animals don't go up levels, you know. But that's pretty clever. Like that because that was a robot. I didn't even think of it. But a human stretching and like he's always snapping back, reset. That's pretty clever. So like if he was to get a limb cut off, could he snap back and have his limb back?
I'm not going to tell you the answer to that
Okay.
question because Tom's Valley number 2 does go deep into exactly the reason why, first of all, he is the way that he is and why Kit Fox hates him so much.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, you don't want to give away. You
It's
know,
connected to that.
you know, we people ask, can your character fight this? Can your character fight that? And I thought the funniest thing was one of the guys at work, construction worker, he bought my comic and read it, and it was just like, so he's got telekinesis. Yeah, the patriarch looks like Superman, acts like Superman, you know, because he's creating this Superman type air, but he's not Superman. Physically, his body is human. You know, he works out, he eats healthy, he takes care of himself, so he's, you know, a buff, in shape, fit guy for 43. But you could beat him up. But he has telekinesis. He uses telekinesis, so when he throws a punch, he's really telekinetically punching you, so it looks like he mimics super strength. But so one of the guys I work with was just like, so if he's distracted, he could get shot. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, okay. He goes, you know what I mean? Like, I'm so glad that just a normie, non-comic book guy figured that out, which is one of the reasons why in the first page, if you bought my comic, you'll see he doesn't fight Boss Moxie. Boss Moxie's got that machine gun. And that's kind of a weakness to Patriarch. He's got to deflect every bullet. That requires so much concentration. You know what I mean? So he kind of intimidated the guy to giving up, because that is a nightmare scenario for him to have a machine gun, you know? And people just like, well, you know, machine guns, you know, you got to do. Batman's afraid of machine guns too. You know what I mean? Superheroes are afraid of machine guns. But, you know, to deflect every bullet, he could easily slip and get killed, or worse, deflect it and hit somebody else.
I always think of, well, for my other major character, which would be Pulse, which basically the co-leader of the Valiant Heroes. I always go back to Mike Barron's Flash, and I thought, when I thought of the character, I connected to that in my mind. Basically, he can basically cause a pulse of energy to either flow through himself or through someone else to enhance their natural or their super abilities, one or the other. But it takes a toll on him, in so much as that he has to build up his mass before he goes out and does any of this stuff, because he's transferring some of his actual body in order to do this, right? He's expending the energy.
So he eats a bunch of burritos. He's got like a big gut, and by the end of the fight, he's thin again. I liked it. I'm sorry that I don't remember your character that has the discs. Her name is Disc, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I have a character named Gates that's basically the same character. She even has the red hair, because I took Dr. Crusher, because her real name is Gates McFadden, and I modeled it after Gates McFadden, and she has the power to make these gates. You know, she's more of a support character that they use to like travel.
I actually based that character a lot on Psylocke when I did, because of the very fact that she, the early Psylocke, when she was actually wearing armor and things like that, because you had Psylocke and she has these mental abilities, but she's standing there in the middle of a battlefield with, you know, gods basically shooting laser beams out of their eyes and everything else. And she's just a normal human being, you know, flesh and bone. So
yeah,
she's got to be really wary of the fact that she's going to get hit by something. So that's why Disc has abilities beyond anybody else's that can just wipe things out. But at the same time, she gets hit by a stray rock coming off of something that's going, you know, getting hit by Thomas Valiant or things like that, and she's gone.
The ability to open up portals and move stuff is so powerful. So powerful. Such a like, my players will be like, oh no, we got a teleporter here. that is bad news. That'd be
lich powers right there.
Yeah. Logic. Oh, RJ and John, what are your opinions on Aquaman as a complete or incomplete hero based on his power, strength? I love Aquaman. Everybody likes Submariner better, but I do like Aquaman. I think he's an underrated hero, and I think he's unexplored. And I think the problem with Aquaman and the Submariner is under the ocean is more alien than an alien planet. Like, you know, it's weird and freaky and different, and nobody ever really plays up how different it would be to be under the sea. What do you think, RJ? Am I being crazy?
No, you're not being crazy, but my mind never actually went in that direction. I just always remember the very old, probably be 70s Aquaman, who basically had the curly Q, but with blonde hair. That's the version of Aquaman I grew up with. So, you know, it was very different from what Aquaman has become, even in the 90s, when he lost his hand and grew the beard and all that kind of stuff, right? My Aquaman that I have set in my head as the traditional Aquaman is just a clean-cut guy that looks like he stepped out of the 1950s.
Yeah, Silver Age Aquaman. I love that. You know, the Super Friends Aquaman. I love the way that looks. Like you said, with the spit curl and the wholesome look and everything. I love the gloves with the fin on it. The orange and the green doesn't work, but it's amazing at the same time. It's so cool. Captain Atom works. He does nuclear fission on something on a minuscule amount of his body to cause him to fly. Yeah, I love Captain Atom. I love the gold and red costume that Steve Ditko made. Steve Ditko makes some of the best designs, and you know, look at all the stuff Steve Ditko designed, with the exception of Captain Atom. They're still in the original. Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, the Lizard, Dr. Octopus, the Molten Man. you know,
The Question.
Blue Beetle, the Quest. They're still in the original Steve Ditko designs. You know, they're amazing. You know, but anyway, back to Captain Atom. I love that series, that Pat Broderick series, and for those of you who watch it, Pat Broderick drew one of the variant covers for issue 1 because I love him. But I always felt like they did the character dirty. You know, I wish he was more like a more straightforward superhero. They always kind of made him like, Superman's the straightforward good guy, so we're gonna do something dirty with Captain Atom. I don't know. It's just sometimes when they fall, like there's no purpose for Billy Bats and Shazam in DC in a world with Superman. Like I think he worked best on Earth S, right? Wasn't that the Shazam world? You know, the Marvel family, they worked best on their own world when he's the top dog of his own world. I think Captain Atom would have worked best. Where was he from? Earth 3? Was that the Charlton universe? You know,
Yes.
it's like, and then DC brought in the Wildstorm characters. How does Grifter exist in the same planet as Batman or Mr. Majestic with Superman? Like they're supposed to be redundant heroes that mirror each other, and they work best in their own universes. Like if the rumors that DC was going to buy Marvel or Marvel is going to buy DC, I get excited, but at the same time, it's like, you know, is there going to be Gotham City and New York City? And you know, and I would like to see Superman hanging out with the Fantastic Four. That would be cool. But like, I don't know. I like them on their own separate worlds. Like Crisis on Infinite Earths. 40 years later, I'm starting to. It was a mistake. That's a lot of material from asking me about Aquaman there, Michael. 40's Submariner is definitely better than 40's Aquaman. Absolutely. And for once, Marvel had the original, because mostly Marvel copied DC because Marvel was later, but Submariner was the original and Aquaman was the copy. And I heard that Submariner is public domain. It's just that Marvel doesn't talk about it. And I think that must be why they changed him from the movie. Yeah, you know, because if they made a Bill Everett accurate Submariner in the movie, then, you know, other toy companies can make Submariner action figures, right? If he's public domain.
He's going to be part of the new Avengers too.
Yeah. The current Captain Atom isn't the same guy who Ditko made. Yeah, I know. That's one of my problems with him. But he changed his costume in the original character in his own series. Yeah, that gold costume, I grew to like it, but I just love that red and gold costume. The original costume, the blue with the light blue arms, that was okay. But I love that gold and red costume. That is so cool. The Kirby one with the scale. I mean, the Ditko one with the scales.
Yeah,
Price.
Ditko's characters always, well, not always, but there's a lot of Ditko characters that get done dirty. I think of Shade the Changing Man, right?
Yeah. Shade the same Changing Man. That was a hard concept, and I don't think anybody else should do it but Ditko. You know, okay, Ditko left. He left it alone. Put it to bed, because that's a bizarre character that only Ditko could work with, if you ask me. You know, like I don't want to see anybody else but Kirby doing a Commandy and OMAC. You know,
Oh yeah,
the OMAC revival was trash. And
yeah,
I got to agree with
Commandy.
you. You talked up OMAC, and I read it recently, like a year ago. What an interesting series. I think that is Kirby at his most imaginative, most predictive, most prophetic. That is guys, go out and read OMAC. It may not be the best work he's ever done, but it is by far the most prophetic work he's ever done. It's like scary.
I think of it as, if you ever read, what the heck is the name of that book? For the life of me, I can't remember what the heck of the name of the book was, but it was something we had to read in high school. It was like, the future is a dystopian future where this guy basically gets brought from the wastelands into civilization. It's like Brave New World, right? To me, OMAC is like one stage between where we are now and Brave New World.
Yeah. It's so creepy, the stuff that he predicted. You know, the private companies owning cities, basically people harvesting body parts, and or it is.
The thing that just popped up over the last couple of years with the rage, uh, basically, I don't know if they call them parlors or what they were, but basically, where you go in and you beat up dummies and stab things and all
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of stuff,
yeah,
right?
raid rooms. Yeah,
Yeah, rage rooms. Yeah, they have those now. I
yeah.
mean, Kirby, imagine this back, I don't know how many decades ago, and they actually have them now.
Well, isn't this a mother box, a cell phone? You
Let's go
know,
ping ping.
yeah. You know what I mean? It has all the information and everything. Like the only thing this doesn't do is summon a boob tube. I still got to take the subway to work. You know, isn't Renee Montoya the question now? Yeah, yeah. Got to turn. And not only is she a woman, but she's a lesbian woman, and that's 100% better than just a regular woman, and a minority, and a minority. So that
Yeah.
just checks all the boxes. The question is public domain too. Is he? That would explain why they change it, because that's why Marvel and DC changed. That's the whole reason why they made what's his name, Miles Morales Spider-Man, because the Ditko estate was suing. So they were hedging their bets, and they were making a Spider-Man that the Ditko, yeah, take this Spider-Man. We got a new Spider-Man now. So whenever people just like, Miles Morales is not Spider-Man, and then people get all mad. No, you're just a racist. It's like, no. All you liberals, all you progressives that are anti-government and everything, you guys are siding with this multinational corporation against the creator's rights. The creator wanted its character back, but you're siding with the multinational. Like, progressives are always wrong. I can't state it easier than that. Progressives are always on the wrong side of everything. The progressives always side with the higher body count, and they always end up siding with the mega corporations and government, large government. They're always wrong. What do you want me to
It's
say?
always about power. That's what
Yep.
I always say in my videos. It's always about power for them.
Okay, Jewel says he looked it up. Submariner is public domain, but only in his Motion Pictures Funnies weekly #1 appearance. Oh, I got to look it up. I always liked Submariner. He's just like an arrogant jerk, and I like that he was sometimes good and sometimes bad. And I love what John Byrne figured out. He was bipolar and explained it. Oh my God, that was brilliant.
I love the Byrne run on Submariner, even though to me that was the beginning of the end of really the top notch John Byrne work. It stepped down just like half a step from what he actually did when he did Submariner a bit, but
it's still light years above what's coming out today.
Yep.
The Quested Vic Sage is public domain in his appearance in Blue Beetle 1967. So, and the Mysterious Suspense one. Okay. So what is public domain? How does it work?
I think it's 80 years after the death of the creator.
So then he shouldn't be public domain, because Ditko just died a couple of years ago. And I know they like the Wizard of Oz has special dispensation. Not Wizard of Oz, Peter Pan, because some orphanage owns the rights to it, so they can get the money to fund it. So public domain is weird. Me personally, I wouldn't put any public domain characters in any of my books, because it's just going to cause problems. And it's easy to make a Batman analog. I got a Batman analog showing up in the next issue of Heroic Tales.
Same here.
Yeah. The Fletcher Superman comics cartoons are public domain, but Superman is not. Yeah, it's easy to make a super. I made Patriarch. He's a Superman analog, but he's different. It's easy. People.
Same with Conan. He's public domain in Europe, but not in America.
I hated Jay's Lee art when he took over for Burt. Yeah, that was a big jarring change for me. I actually quit Namor when he took over. I since went back and bought him because I'm a crazy person, but I quit. When John Byrne quit, I quit. Disney bribed Congress to change copyright laws a few times. Yeah, I heard about that. And that's what I hate now, that everybody's making Steamboat Willie serial killer, or Winnie the Pooh face cannibal. Knock it off, guys. Popeye, public masturbator. I don't want to read these comics. Make up your own character. And if you want to do a Popeye story, turning him into a serial killer is just cheap, lowest common denominator, and it doesn't sell me on buying your comic. Now, if you wanted to make a Popeye and just make it as true to why can't I think of the creator, E.E. Seeger, as possible, because you love Super Popeye, go for it. I'll support that. But I don't want to see, Popeye, tax evader or something stupid like that. I thought it was 80 years after the first appearance. I also think that you can like legally release stuff. Like, didn't Bill Willingham say that Fables is public domain? That he's, because
Yeah, I heard that too.
yeah. So like, is that logic? You're a smart guy. Can you just say I renounce all rights? It's public, because I know Lovecraft, right from the get go, you could use all of his characters. He kind of encouraged other people to use his ideas in their stories.
You can let the copyright lapse.
Yeah, like
That's what they use. That's why the movie "It's a Wonderful Life" actually is so big and loved for a Christmas movie, is because no one wanted to actually pay the money to keep the copyright up, so they let it lapse, and everybody just kept playing it over and over and over again because it was free.
yes, the Charlton characters. Yeah, I know that, but there's a difference between copyright trade. Yeah, yeah, because that's what happened to Captain Marvel. Billy Batts and Shazam, right? Didn't DC, because DC took it from Fawcett, and then DC let it lapse, and then Marvel jumped on the name.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, it's a hot potato that I wouldn't want to touch, and I don't want to use Batman. Batman belongs to DC. That's theirs. I respect that. I would love to do a Fantastic Four story, but I don't want to wait till it's public domain. And plus I have a Fantastic Four analog that, instead of the four stretching powers and whatever, they're, one's electromagnetic, one's gravity, one's fusion, and one's fission. So it's, the four forces. So I'll tell a Fantastic story through that.
There are so many things that you got to watch out for, especially when you're doing comics, because of the visuals. Like when we did Thomas Valley #1, the main building, which was the what is Legion of Justice, was basically a copy of, well, I don't, when Renzo did it, it was a copy of the Empire State Building, and we couldn't use it. I said, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to redo the entire page.
Oh, really?
Because even the shadow of the Empire State Building is trademarked.
Wow. Well, I would use the Chrysler Building. I'm a Chrysler Building man over the Empire State Building. But yeah, I would make my own buildings too. I thought you were going to say that you used the Hall of Justice building, and then that's funny because there really is a building in Cleveland that looks like that, and then there's the comic. So you're going to get it from two different groups. Yeah, I don't know. Again,
John, we've been going on for almost 2 hours here.
Yeah, I could talk. We should know that about me by now.
I just want to let everybody know one more time that the link is in the description for John's book, Heroic Tales #2, which you're looking at in the background. So if anybody wants to take a look, hit that description, or hit that link in the description, and go on over and take a look at John's book and order. It's only $10. That's it.
$10. Both covers $20. I couldn't give a bundle deal because I'm really, RJ will tell you, I'm profit margin is paper thin.
He's a crazy person. John's a crazy person.
for many reasons. And you could bundle in. So the add-on tiers, I might as well explain this. You could get copies of issue 1 for those of you who never got issue 1. I know a bunch of people told me that they didn't want to back issue 1, even though they liked me. They'd like because they didn't know if I was going to deliver because of crowdfunding. I delivered. I got these issue 1s right now. It's going to happen. So you could jump on. I still got copies of all the covers. So, I'm not marking it up. I just want people to read it. I just want to make enough money. I got a job. I do pretty good. I'm an electrician. I do pretty good. I just want to be able to pay for the next issue. I can't afford to shell out like $6,000 to $7,000 to make a comic book all the time. I did it once. So I'm just asking if you guys can help me to fund the next issue. That's it. So that's why my comics, I don't want to say cheap, but they're inexpensive. They're affordable. That's the way I want to work. So And I got to thank you, RJ. I got to say, out of all the people whose channels I've been on, your chat has been the best. Your group is the best.
I got good chat. I got a good chat.
You got a good
My
group.
guys here are loyal. They come back every week, and they want good comics. So I love my chat.
Yeah, and if you got Thomas Valiant, again, Thomas Valiant makes an appearance in my book, kind of, and it's drawn by the same guy who draws Thomas Valiant. So you're not going to have like a George Tuska version of the Hulk when you really wanted a George Perez version. That's kind of mean to make fun of George Tuska, but it was always a letdown when I found out that George Tuska did my comic that month. Oh man. I bet there's a lot of crossover. No, me and RJ jokingly talked about it. Two completely different worlds, although it seems like we have a lot of similar ideas. I think it's because we like the same comics. We like the same integrity in the comics. No deaths, no resurrections. Cheap clone stories. So, and it's funny because we've talked behind the scenes, and we're like, yeah, I'm kind of doing that too. So it is kind of funny. And again, RJ said goodbye, and I'll talk for another 20 minutes because that's the way I am. So I'm going to stop talking. End scene. And thank you, Calliope at Night. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. And let's see if we can play John's trailer one more time as outro. And link is in the description for my book, John's new book. Anybody wants to go back, they are there. And I'm just going to, let's see, put this. Oh, wait a minute. I got to share a screen. I took the share screen off.
Isn't it funny that we have longer streams when we don't have a guest?
We got more to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. Let's replay John's trailer for for Heroic Tales #2. And I'll leave it at that. And I'll say goodnight to everybody.
Fresh, so people could see what this chat did for me.
Oh, okay. Let's see here.
You see 40 backers, $1,300, and 43 backers. We got 3 backers and over $100, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Let's just stick this up here one more time.